So, interesting news. So I did a video going after, I guess I was joking, Sam Seder. It was a caller that called in Sam Seder. Now, apparently this was a bit that they had made up in order to attack Jimmy Dore. The person who sent me this tweet, I assume he was a subscriber, gave me an idea of what it was, but he had a mistaken impression of what it was, and I kind of went with his mistaken impression. Here's what it is. I fucked up. That said, they covered that. Now, to me, I'm enamored by this because that means the Sam Seder does exist. Like I used to watch Sam Seder, which makes it awesome. Like I binge watch him eat libertarians alive, and it is the funniest shit you'd ever see in your life. And so I am somewhat enamored by the fact that Sam Seder has graced, his smugness has graced this podunk show. I've invited Sam Seder on this show multiple times. He has an open invitation to come onto the show. That's an invitation he would never accept, but it's an open invitation nonetheless. That said, I did fuck up on that clip, so fair enough. But now that you're here, and now that you know I exist, the point that I was making in the clip was correct. This idea of lesser evil voting, that derision was correct. That derision was intended. Let's use the 2016 election. That's a flashpoint to a lot of this stuff. Hillary Clinton, the person that Sam Seder supported vociferously, was beaten by a reality show host. It was an embarrassing loss. She got the stuffing beat out of her. Now, they like to tout this idea of 3 million more votes, but those 3 million more votes came in one state. If you look across the country, she got the stuffing beat out of her. Now, to this, losing to a reality show host, you would think that there would be some level of introspection, that there would be an autopsy. There would be this trying to understanding, why did we lose this bad? How do we fail to this degree? But no. Problem, at least based on majority report shows, is Susan Sarandon, Jimmy Dore, Jill Stein, and now me, and whoever else that they disagree with. Look, fact of the matter is, there is a lot of pain throughout the United States. I mean, you have, the median wage is like $30,000 a year. That is, I would argue, somewhat of a poverty wage. The majority of the country, the overwhelming majority, don't have $400 in the bank to pay a bill if such came up. And under this model, the guy who ran on this idea of hope and change, who was called the communist, socialist, and everything in between, gave 95% of the wealth to the top 1%. That's based on what he says, so don't take my word for it. This should be somewhat instructive. Now, the reason I say this is, with this much pain, I would argue that this pain drives a certain degree of chaos and a certain degree of aberrant behavior. And this Democratic Party that speaks in this feel your pain language, that is supposed to be the release valve on the capitalistic system, fails to deliver. It wasn't hope and change setting yourself on fire for the banks. He failed to deliver. Not just failed to deliver, it utterly discredits what it means to be the left or what it means to be the Democratic Party in this country. Many of those voters who ended up voting for Trump were Democrats. Now, you have to ask yourself the question of why would all of these people set themselves on fire in the way that they set themselves on fire by voting for reality shows. Now, in 2008, they voted for the change candidate. In 2016, once again, they threw themselves at the change candidate. But from the Seder show perspective, the problem here, again, is the voter. As if it's the voter responsibility to get his candidate elected, as opposed to holding the candidate accountable for her own failures. But fair enough. West Virginia, 25% of the kids in West Virginia are at the poverty line. West Virginia voted for Donald Trump. That is fucking amazing. You have another situation where the guy who was the bomber called in a bomb threat to the power company because he was terrified that they were going to cut his lights off. He voted for Trump. He was an ardent Trump supporter. With this kind of weird irony that the person who Donald Trump put in office was one of the people who took his house. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was took his house. I guess the point I'm making here is there is a certain degree of aberrant behavior that is expressed within the population itself. And the comfortable left, the left that is somewhat detached from the pain of the realities that the people deal with on a daily basis, who can sit smugly and look down on the public and call them deplorables or call them racist and sexist and homophobic. And I would agree with you that some of them are racist and sexist and homophobic, but they're still human beings. And those human beings still feel pain and still feel anguish and are still under pressure. Many of those people that are called deplorables by the Democratic Party, that are called sexist and racist and bigots, were Democrats at one point. After the party was discredited, not so much. There should have been accountability. And that would have meant aiming that ire at the party itself, as opposed to looking at the voters as if it's the voters' fault. You should have focused it where it belonged, at the party itself. For the last 20, 30 years, the Democratic Party has used identity politics as a wedge issue, while simultaneously being incentivized by the cash that was being dropped into their G-string to push economics to the side. With a certain game theory that Republicans are batshit crazy, so we can always really create a relational distance between the two. Meaning, not this overarching idea of what it means to be a Democrat, but a policy position that is always relational to the Republican. The public didn't want status quo. The public wanted something fundamentally different. I'm sorry, your candidate failed. That said, I think there is a radical in Michael Brooks that is trying to claw its way out. Save Michael Brooks, save the world. I really believe that, because I think the argument that needs to take place is on the left. People like Seder or Brooks, need to start holding their own party accountable, as opposed to looking outside of that party at people like Dorr or Stein. Stein is not even a Democrat. To scam votes or to shame people to vote for their candidate. I find that to be an amazing thing. But nevertheless, it's the reality to which we find ourselves. They did the same thing with Ralph Nader. When Ralph Nader ran in the race and Al Gore lost, they screamed high heaven that the problem here was Nader. The problem here wasn't Nader. Al Gore lost 300,000 Democrats in Florida. Not to mention he couldn't even win his own state. But the problem is Nader. The problem is Nader. Same tune, different year. I've started a petition. I've started a GoFundMe account. Stop Sam Seder from abusing his work wife. I think his work wife, Michael Brooks, has a radical in him that wants to get out. Take a look at this video. This was a video where Michael Brooks was attacking Jimmy Dore. Now, he was attacking Jimmy Dore because apparently Jimmy Dore said something about him. But in the video, it becomes clear Jimmy Dore jokes him for voting for Hillary Clinton. Listen to how he starts this video, though. It's utterly Orwellian in the language that he uses. And I suspect this is kind of the soothing incrementalism that they use for the people who watch the Seder show at this point. Let's take a look. Actually, how many downvotes did they get? God, look at the downvotes. Look at the downvotes. I call it Orwellian, but people know when they're being bullshitted. Let's take a look.
We need to keep it as simple as it can be, but not simpler than that, unfortunately. So this left needs to be smart, it needs to be radical, it needs to be strategic, and it needs to be brave.
Smart, radical, strategic, and brave. And then later on, in the context of this video, defends the vote for Clinton. Does that count as smart, strategic, and brave? Does bravery come into this at all at this point? I guess I'm just making the point that Michael Brooks, I think he's being genuine here. I don't think he's being a lunatic. I think these are the mental gymnastics that work wives under brutish men need to perform in order to just go about their day. I created a GoFundMe account for Michael Brooks. Save Michael Brooks. Save Michael Brooks. Save the world. Save Michael Brooks from his abusive relationship with Sam Seder. But let's take a look at the GoFundMe thing, and I'll end it on this. This is, not a gay joke. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at those eyes. Look at that. Oh, the animal. So this is the GoFundMe thing. It'll be at the bottom. Save Sam Seder's abused work wife. Save his abused work wife. All proceeds to this, by the way, goes towards Center Against Domestic Abuse. All of the proceeds. Michael Brooks, work wife of Majority Report's owner and perversely smug MSNBC contributor Sam Seder, is in an abusive relationship. Seder's most notable accomplishment in life is being temporarily fired from his comfortable sheepdog position on Democrats' propaganda outlet MSNBC after making a tasteless rape joke using his own daughter. This is the joke. Don't care if Roman Polanski, but I hope if my daughter is ever raped, it's by an older, truly talented man with a great sense of mise-en-scene. That's fucking gross. That's gross. The horrors that must have occurred that night, one could only imagine. During the 2016 election, Brooks said he wanted a radical left, but under the ever-vigilant eye of comfortable Democrat Seder, screamed voting for Hillary was the way to get there. This is, of course, nonsense on stilts. The notion that status quo Hillary Clinton is a path to socialism is rank incompetence, or a hallmark of the mental gymnastics abused work wives must perform to get through the day to keep the likes of men like Seder satisfied. Right here. This is what he's dealing with. Right here. Help us provide a safe space for soft, passionate Brooks to escape and actually push for a radical change that will reach the new world. A different world is possible. Propping up the system that got you this one is not the way to get there. No person calling for a radical left should have to live under the whip of a boss, setting themselves on fire for Hillary. Save Michael Brooks. This is partial satire, of course. It is unknown whether work wife Brooks is abused. Incompetence is always possible. I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. All proceeds literally go towards domestic violence prevention. It's never okay. Real talk. I mean that. I take Brooks at his word that he wants a different world. You're not going to get it by propping up any random Democrat. Just saying. I'll leave this here. I put the link at the bottom. I consider it. Let me be honest for the moment. Look, this was honest. But I consider both of these guys in my sandbox. I strongly suspect that if given the opportunity, if you were in a different world, in a different political space, these guys will be right there by your side pushing for 99% of the stuff that you would come up with from the standpoint of the left. The issue, I think, which is why I think this is an interesting conversation and debate, and I hate the fact that they debased it by calling people dumb left, is how you get there. And whether or not propping up the system the way it is is the way to get to that particular point. I think it's nonsense to believe that. Look, I think this idea that any random Democrat, especially within this kind of gamemanship that's taken place, where Republicans are batshit crazy, Democrats move to the right, Republicans jumped off of a cliff, and Democrats can just say, I'm rather sane, this other guy is not, and you continuously prop up this person over and over and over again. I don't know how they get you any advancement. But nevertheless, teach his own. I guess my issue here is the voter shaming. So I do think this is an interesting conversation to have. Sam Seder is always welcome onto the show to have this conversation. I strongly suspect he would never take that up. He would never leave the comfort of that studio in order to have a real conversation about this stuff. But the offer stands. Either way, at the very least, stop abusing Brooks and allow the radical in Brooks to fly free. That's where we stand. Thanks all.